It was a Beanie Baby backup on Interstate 285 West.
Oh my God, the guy's stopping!
It was no longer a child's toy. It was the thrill of the hunt for me then.
You're how old? 20?
It kind of got addictive.
At the height of America's rising prosperity in the 90s, the frenzy over a new toy mirrors the stock market.
They want Beanie Babies.
A Beanie Baby.
The wolves on this Wall Street may be stuffed, but they bite.
The homicidal, bloodthirsty,
Greedy, slimy people.
I think I'm through because it's gotten out of hand. I am concerned.
But a kid's toy leading to counterfeiting?
They only retail for $5, but some of these are a lot more valuable.
Armed robbery and tax fraud?
No one is above the law, and everyone, including the wealthy, has to pay their dues.
And even murder.
that's not far from the truth.
In the early 90s, as America is starting to dial up the internet, the dot-com bubble that'll define the decade is just starting to inflate.
Wall Street believes that the internet is the future.
In a Chicago suburb, an old-fashioned toy maker is quietly stitching a new creation that'll give birth to a real-world frenzy and help launch the country into cyberspace. His name is Ty Warner, and his invention is a pair of small, slightly understuffed plush animals. Brownie the bear and Pinchers the lobster. He calls them Beanie Babies.
A Beanie Baby is a bean bag filled with pellets that is shaped like an animal. My name is Lena Trevetti, and I was the 12th employee to work at Ty. They were so bold and bright, they just stood out with these facial features that will just capture you and just make you fall in love with it.
Here is Peanut, the royal blue elephant, the magenta teddy. Lots of people came up with clothes. I don't think you can look at a Beanie Baby and not smile. My name is Mary Beth Sobolewski, and I am a self-proclaimed Beanie Baby addict. And I was also editor-in-chief of Mary Beth's Beanie World magazine.
I never want people to forget that these were beautiful plush toys. My name is Mark Balomo, and I'm a toy and pop culture expert. Let's get this out of the way. I own about 100,000 action figures and about 250,000 comics. And I own every figure, vehicle, weapon, accessory, creature, playset, mail-away, and promotional for every action figure line that's been made since 1964.
When Ty Warner officially launches Beanie Babies, there are 9 animals in the collection, each with a heart-shaped tag bearing his first name.
The sales strategy, as I understood it, was this was something that was special. And in order for it to be deemed as special, you wouldn't find it at a big box retailer. You would go to those small mom and pop shops.
But many store owners initially refused to stock Beanie Babies, and his competitors reportedly dismissed the toys as roadkill.
They started production in '93. Nobody cared. '94. Nobody cared.
But anyone who picked up a Beanie Baby couldn't seem to put it down.
It was really difficult to walk past the table without just picking them up and, bouncing them around. It was addicting to just be handling them.
I'll use a French word, their puissance, their purity really made people take notice. And that's what I've always really appreciated about Ty Warner as a designer. By Christmas of '95, regionally, in Chicago, where their headquarters was, people cared.
I think they're fun to collect.
Now, 2 years into production, Ty is selling the $5 beanies at select gift shops around Chicago. The company is also turning out many new characters, but exactly how many is a company secret. One that's designed to cultivate demand.
Well, collectors wanted them all. Wouldn't you want them all?
I'm gonna get the weenie dog.
It was so fun to be with our kids, going store to store, having a little checklist, and bonding together.
Smoochie, this is Legs, Allie.
As the little group started collecting, it just caught on.
I need to take some to Michigan. They can't seem to find them up there.
Really?
Yeah, very short.
Your friends had the ones that you were missing. It made you want them.
Goldie! We don't have Goldie! Yes! I was going by a collectible store, gift shops in the area. They were more prevalent then. And I looked in the window and there were these beautiful butterflies. So I went and I purchased 3 of the flutter butterflies and then purchased 10 other beanies. And I brought them home and my daughter fell in love with them. I'm Becky Phillips, and my whole life in the 1990s, between 1995 and 2000, was involved with Beanie Babies.
Toys in the 80s were conflict-based. The age of the Cold War and Ronald Reagan. So we had a lot of toy lines that were good guys versus bad guys.
You gotta get up early to catch Cobra.
Cobra Commander and G.I. Joe figures at the...
Where in the 1990s, the Berlin Wall falls, you don't have that communist other anymore. You have a period of relative prosperity. So when you're talking about a lot of these animal-based 90s action figure and toy lines, it was more based on whimsy than it was the real world.
The country in the middle of the decade looks different than it did at the start. The recession that got Bill Clinton elected is over.
There is no doubt that the economic strategy we put in place in 1993 created the conditions for the extraordinary private sector growth we have all witnessed.
More Americans have jobs and are making more money. They're also beginning to dip their toes into the waters of the World Wide Web.
Tonight, the information superhighway and one of its main thoroughfares, an online network called Internet.
I was going to school full-time at DePaul University and learned about the internet through one of my college professors. So I was like kind of running things in my head, and I was like, you know, we have these Beanie Babies, but people don't necessarily know what Beanie Babies exist. So I was like, what if we just had a way that people can go to this website? My brother was a senior in high school, so I just asked Ty, I said, hey, can I get some help? I think my brother can come in after school and we can get things done quicker. Had the computer set up and I just made a mock page. It had to have been the ugliest thing that anyone has ever seen on the internet. And I called Ty into this little office that I had this computer set up in and said, you know, this is the internet. Oh. And he got it. He understood it right away. And he said, you know, yeah, why don't you put some time and work on it and just show me what you come up with.
When Warner flips the switch on Ty.com in late 1996, he makes internet history. His website, designed far from Silicon Valley by Lena and her brother in high school, will accidentally create a reason companies create websites: to sell things.
Never at any point was the Ty website selling Beanie Babies directly to consumers. The website was designed as a tool to provide information on the product. We had a blog and we had a guest book and we had all these ways that people could interact. It wasn't like we, at the time, were like, we're gonna build the first business to consumer website, let's do it, you know? It was just what happened.
We started to get on the website because that's all there was on the internet.
But Ty's new Beanie Baby website takes on a life of its own.
So you were reaching out to different people through chat rooms. There were a lot of teenagers. And instead of talking about beanies, all the teenagers were asking each other out online. There was foul language on the site.
And then people would sometimes be chatting back and forth. Sometimes people would start arguing.
And so Ty Warner was very upset because nobody was really talking about Beanie Babies. So after 4 months, he closed it down.
This isn't the end of Ty.com. Warner will relaunch it with a scheme that triggers a modern-day gold rush.
About every 4 months, they will retire a beanie, so then prices will start immediately going up.
We could be millionaires!
But as Notorious B.I.G. will rap about in the 90s, mo money, mo problems. And it won't be long before a shadow falls over the sunny world of Beanie Babies.
Ty Warner had to take the Ty heart off of shipping boxes because they would assault UPS drivers.
Such staggering amounts of money are being made by people who are so young.
Get used to it.
By 1996, there's a fever building in America. The internet has arrived, and the stock of companies with a .com in their name is seen as can't miss by investors.
Well, this is absolutely real. This is a revolution.
Seemingly overnight, speculators are making bank on .com stocks from companies that have yet to turn a profit. With the internet fast becoming the land of opportunity, Ty Warner's looking to stake his claim. So 4 months after shuttering his website, he relaunches it with an announcement that sets Beanie Baby fans ablaze.
Ty co-opted that idea, Ty the man, and said, we're gonna start retiring some of these. That made people think, oh my God, they're never gonna make those again, so I had better go back and buy the ones that I had missed.
I heard Bongo retired, is that true?
Bongo, yeah, just today.
Ty wanted very much to have total control over not only his product, but the entire market.
So it was just an incredibly clever strategy to make people believe that there was a scarcity to these products. It was brilliant.
I would find it very hard to believe that there was any site on the internet at that time that was getting more traffic than the Beanie Babies website. People would post messages like, hey everybody, I have a Beanie Baby that I'm willing to trade for this much, or I'm willing to sell for this much.
$200, $300.
He's worth anywhere from $500 to probably $900.
Bongo, retired.
I know. Don't touch him now.
A lot of the moms during that time were hunting for the Beanie Babies. And then after a while, it kind of got addictive for me to find as many as possible.
Total addiction. Once you fall in love with them, you're all through. You'll do anything to get more.
It was no longer a child's toy. It was the thrill of the hunt for me then.
Say bye.
America is hooked. By year's end, Ty Warner's retirement ploy is working. Now sold in stores across the country, Ty's Beanie Babies generate an estimated $28 million in sales, $5 at a time.
Well, they started lining up at 1:30 in the afternoon yesterday for our 8 o'clock sale.
If you don't have a number, you're not going to be let in, so everybody else who has a number been rotated out.
Every time he would retire beanies, they started buying not one or two, they were buying hundreds of them.
This is crazy.
Having artificially created a full-fledged craze, Ty Warner is no longer just a toy maker. He's a bona fide puppet master, and an elusive one at that.
He did no commercials. He did no interviews. So people wanted to know, like, who is this person?
When you read the harrowing stories of his youth, you realize and recognize that this guy had it tough. Ty Warner was a very unhappy kid who got in a little trouble, and his father sent him off to a military academy where he excelled. He had a mother who was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and he only wanted his mother's love. And Georgia, his mother, just refused him anytime she could.
Ty's childhood lays the foundation for what he becomes, a natural-born salesman. His ability and flamboyant appearance make him a standout at his first job, salesman for the Daikin Toy Company.
He would get all dressed up in this huge fur coat with a top hat and a cane. And he was driving in this white Rolls Royce. And he got the attention of the storekeepers that way, the gift shops, the collectible stores at the time.
He was making more in commissions than their CEO. That's all you need to know about him as a salesman.
But when his bosses discovered that he was working on his own toy creations, first comes the pink slip, then comes Ty Inc.
He was a lot like Willy Wonka. You hardly ever saw him, and he was always dressed in all black, in an era where people didn't do that.
I don't think he ever received the love that he needed. So he poured all the unconditional positive regard that he had built up into his toys.
As the 90s turn another year older, Beanie Babies hit a massive growth spurt.
Last night we found this site, which is ebay.com. It's an auction site.
eBay was created by Pierre Omidyar as a website called Auction Web. Before the rise of eBay, I used to have to go to a local dealer and say, how much will you give me for this? He'd say, well, I've only got $100 in the register. That's all I can offer you. Enter eBay. So where you might have an audience of 3 to 10 people in a local store for an item, you would have hundreds, potentially thousands, when you put it up on eBay. So that creates and perpetuates the secondary market value of the object.
It was the natural economics of supply and demand. The people who had the supply would put them on auction, and the people who really wanted them would bid them up to astronomical prices.
I would say over $5,000.
$5,000.
Yeah.
This is my livelihood, basically, but I am a hairdresser. So I do work 1 day a week, but I do sleep, eat, and breathe beanies.
We were on eBay every day, almost the whole day, looking for the beanies, checking the prices.
At one point, 7 to 10% of all business, of all listings on eBay were Beanie Babies. It was absolutely revolutionary, and collectors were essential to the rise of eBay.
If eBay is a boon for some collectors, it's a digital bonanza for Ty Warner. In 1996, his company's profits jumped tenfold from just the year before. Total revenue, $280 million.
This is the first time in 30 years that something this big has happened. I think the last thing probably was the hula hoop.
The Beanie Baby train is already moving fast, and then fast food decides to climb on board.
First I got Pinky, then I got Pinky. I got Pinky and Patty in the same week.
What, Vanessa catch something?
Teeny Beanie Baby-itis.
Now at McDonald's, your kids can get Teeny Beanie Babies and a Happy Meal.
Something in Ty Warner's head recognized the potential of offering a tiny or smaller Beanie Baby in a Happy Meal as a way to promote his product globally.
The campaign is an instant hit.
I got a zebra, I got a pig.
So much so that McDonald's keeps it rolling the following year.
They're cute, and they're worth a lot of money.
But it will soon spin out into a free-for-all that will derail the fun.
Oh my God, look at this.
And bloody the beanie craze.
What started out to be so fun now was getting so ugly.
They're rolling on this, right?
What do they give away here?
Hey, Beanie Baby.
When McDonald's kicks off its second Teeny Beanie giveaway in the summer of 1998, there's a whiff of tension in the air.
I had to eat a Happy Meal today so I could get one for my other kids, and then they can fight over it when we get home.
Fueled by bidders on eBay, a full set of the giveaway plushies are now worth $75 on the secondary market. And that's leading to some very unhappy meal family experiences.
What we did is we gave each of our older children $20 bill to wait in line to get a Happy Meal. So we had 4 children and ourselves in line to get as many Happy Meals as we could. And we would go there to the next McDonald's.
Just met a mom in line and we're gonna trade because I needed a moose, and so I'm gonna trade my fish for a moose that I got yesterday.
The bags that you purchased had pictures of Beanie Babies all over them. So people were like, give me the bag, give me the box, give me the beanie, and keep the food.
When word spreads that some McDonald's around the country are running out, the mania spirals into mayhem.
The woman in front of me, they had turned over a card that they were out of something, and she went nuts.
It was no longer a restaurant. It was basically a line to get a teeny beanie.
It was disrupting business.
I've heard that people kind of take them out of your hand.
Adults standing in line and punching each other to get Happy Meals. That happened.
The worst I've seen as far as for a stuffed animal or a toy for, a child.
That McDonald's promotion of teeny beanies is what really became the zenith, the homicidal, bloodthirsty lines for Beanie Babies. That was the apex.
It was a Beanie Baby backup on Interstate 285 West after a load of McDonald's-bound teeny beanie bears spilled out into the middle of the interstate. Most drivers simply slowed down, but others saw gold and they went for it.
There it is, God. Oh my God, look at this. They're rolling on this, right?
It became a very different market. It was no longer the moms and their kids. It became people's full-time jobs because they thought it was easy money. So when that happens, you start to attract a whole different type of person.
For a long time, my job was handling the articles, and I would see these newspaper articles of people running after UPS trucks.
It's just one of those little fads, like an Elmo. Come here, Elmo. And they want Beanie Babies.
Ty Warner had to take the Ty heart off of shipping boxes because they would assault UPS drivers.
I'll come out of the back of a store and there'll be 5 people waiting on me.
There was a lot of theft.
The security guard making the rounds was surprised by 2 men who jumped him from behind.
Many organized crime rings recognized the value of beanies. And instead of drugs, instead of prostitution, instead of guns, they would actually break into shops to steal Beanie Babies.
I think I'm through because it's gotten out of hand. I am concerned.
This beanie business is getting bad.
It is.
And when counterfeiting started, really?
Very popular and easy to sell. No serial numbers, no markings, no nothing. No way to trace any of the stolen goods.
You started to get the counterfeit beanies from Beijing. And they were coming into the country through eBay. We had collectors who had spent $10,000 on beanies, and every one of them were fake.
What we found was 456 pieces seized for infringement
on the popular Beanie Baby copyright.
When it became an arena of greedy, slimy people trying to slide into the joy of this collecting market, I lost my joy.
Although the counterfeit market is cutting into Ty Warner's bottom line, 1998 is still a banner year. His company's profits hit $1 billion, and he personally takes home more than $700 million. But the more he makes, the less we see him.
Newspapers would call and want a quote from the company as they were writing an article about Beanie Babies in their newspaper, about the craze, about this new product.
The more they tried, the more he pulled back.
You think of him as a strange Willy Wonka type. You think of him as a man in an ivory tower making decisions and laboring over the toys. And that's not far from the truth. He's a man literally in a tower. He bought the Four Seasons Hotel and renovated its penthouse suite.
If Warner's home is a tower, his headquarters in Westmount, Illinois is a fortress, and employees are seemingly under strict gag orders from above.
They had the Westmont police patrolling that building at all times. You could go inside and talk to the front desk, but you would get no information. You weren't able to talk to anybody.
Now, is Mr. Warner going to be here all the time?
Don't know.
Okay.
And honestly, no problem. You'll never get to him.
Never?
To be private.
Why?
A private individual. Very, very private individual. Very private.
We all knew that there was going to be coming a Beanie Baby called the Billionaire Beanie Baby. Ty Warner was going to be giving those to his employees. So I load my baby at 6 months old in the car seat, and the two of us go on over to Ty's parking lot. The publisher sends me $5,000 in cash and told me to offer that to employees. And I start offering them to people. I tried maybe 10 different employees coming out, and they all turned me down and with fear in their eyes. So I stopped that, and I just sat in the parking lot. I took my baby out of the car seat to feed him. And as I'm feeding this baby, the Westmont police comes over with his hands on his guns and says, "You need to get out of this parking lot right now. This is private property." I'm like, well, can I just finish feeding my baby? Right now. And here I'm just a suburban mom with a little baby.
Like every company, the maker of Beanie Babies has trade secrets and business strategies to protect. And as Ty Warner approaches the 4th year of his Beanie Baby boom, he's about to reveal a scheme that'll crush collectors and topple the market. Near the end of President Clinton's second term,
A Beanie Baby. I love that. I love that.
And on the eve of a new millennium, much of America is living like the bubble can only keep expanding.
10,000, 150,000 is 3.8. 5,000 at 5.8.
From the titans of Wall Street to New York City cabbies, folks across the economic spectrum are partying like it's 1999. Thanks to massive windfalls from their .com stock trading. And while the good times continue to roll on the stock exchanges, so it goes in the Beanie exchange as well.
Do you have any retired ones?
They were sold for $8,800 at different places.
There were a lot of collectors that quit their jobs, and they were at the trade shows. So we would meet them, and there were some of the girls that were collecting. They had the most beautiful jewelry I've ever seen. They had diamond necklaces, diamond earrings, and she was making, she said, every month about $30,000 just in her beanie profits.
He is the king of all beanies, the prize, number one.
So how much is he?
He's $5,200.
We've got to remember that television programs, newspapers, and magazines, and Beanie Baby-centric magazines that sprung up all perpetuated this value myth.
Isn't that cute? What would you rather have, a new car or Peanut the elephant?
There was also a book that came out that was predicting the prices of the beanies and how they would go up. And he was predicting very high prices. And so people were reading this as if it was the truth.
All items can be found at Mary Beth's Beanie World.
It's an international magazine. We're now printing over 1 million copies per month. Like in this magazine, there are pictures of every single Beanie Baby every month and their values.
There was a layer of people that were looking at this as an investment. Like, oh, I have stock in Walmart and I also have these Beanie Babies.
There were a lot of people that watched their friends get incredibly wealthy off internet stocks and really wanted to get in on it, but they didn't have enough money to invest, so they went to Beanie Babies. This is all fueled by the fact that the initial investment cost was $5. It's a $5 bill with the potential for thousands of dollars in revenue, and that's in everyone's minds.
At one point, I was offered $100,000 for my entire collection. And guess what? I couldn't sell. It became like a part of me, like an appendage, an arm or a leg, this collection.
Many people have a sentimentality for what they own and a belief in that if it's a collectible, we'll always appreciate. People wanted to keep these for a long time because they truly believed in their hearts that this was going to put their kids through college. And I think that forced many collectors to hold on to their collections well past the due date.
Almonds. I don't have almonds, right?
While prices in the secondary market are still in the stratosphere, wholesale orders are beginning to dip. Having successfully sparked the now 4-year-old craze with his retirement scheme, Ty Warner comes up with a new plan to juice demand and prove that he can make lightning strike twice.
Ty Warner put out a large message to the media.
December 31st, 1999, the entire line of Beanie Babies will be retired. That is big, big news.
So again, you had all these questions on the chat rooms and people calling each other and saying, what is he doing?
They would put out messages on the website that the end is coming.
Well, I think it's really bad. Kind of sad because I really like Beanie Babies.
Ty wanted very much to have total control, and he felt like the great Oz behind the curtain.
Ty Warner expects his latest scheme will lead to another payday. But when a Beanie-related murder occurs in small-town West Virginia, it's the wake-up call that Beanie fever is about to break.
I somewhat hope that the craze will start to die off so our sanity can return to us again.
Beanie Babies are dead. It's over. December 31st. Millennium. No more Beanie Babies.
With months to go until the end of the decade, word of Ty Warner's declaration that all Beanie Babies will be retired on December 31st creates fear and uncertainty in the collecting community.
They will stop making them by the end of the year, so I better go and get some.
We might pick up a few more, yeah.
In the beginning, the collecting market started to go, oh no, now we gotta collect all the ones that we don't have yet. So it created more desire.
In Elkins, West Virginia, 2 night watchmen at a local lumber yard, Jeffrey White and Harry Simmons, are hoping to cash in on the rush. The two purportedly have a plan to start a trading business. Simmons loans White $150 and several $100s worth of beanies to sell. But the deal goes sideways when White doesn't pay Simmons. The two argue. White storms off and then returns with a gun. When the smoke clears, Simmons is dead, and Jeff White is sent to prison. The final beanie to be produced is named The End. Stamped on the heart-shaped tag attached to the little black bear is this poem. All good things come to an end. It's been fun for everyone. Peace and hope are never gone. Love you all and say so long. But, as collectors soon discover, the heartfelt message rings hollow.
I believe it was always Ty's intention to keep the Beanie Baby market going. He thought in his mind, if all this retirement had worked so well all these years, can you imagine if I retire them all and then I bring them out again? People are gonna go crazy. Well, the opposite happened.
A few months later, Ty restarts production with a Beanie Baby named The Beginning.
People took that opportunity to quit. They felt played. That crashed the market, just like a stock market crash.
At one of the shows in Chicago, there was a collectible person who was from Carlsbad, California, huge collector, and he came in with his beanies and he put them down, threw the beanies down on the floor and said, "I'm done."
The prices crashed. Ty Warner made an enormous error for himself and for all the collectors of Beanie Babies. It was over. It was over. People were very, very disappointed. They spent so much money, and it wasn't at all what they had hoped. Now, all of a sudden, you have a toy box full with perfect tags of Beanie Babies that can do no more than be played with at this point.
The most famous or infamous story, there was a soap opera actor who invested $100,000 worth of Beanie Babies for his children's college education, and then it just all falls apart.
I was selling off a lot of our collection by the end of 1999. That connection I had with my children was kind of waning, and they were going on to other things. And so that was one of the reasons. The other reasons really were there were so many counterfeits on the market.
They sell for $5 or $6 a piece, and they used to be tough to get, but not anymore. The fad is fading.
When talking about the Beanie Baby bubble, values are based on speculation about future value. It's not like oil futures, because you're not talking about a product that has existed for hundreds of years. So there are no patterns to look back on. Eventually, that bubble burst.
While the Beanie Baby faithful deal with the financial fallout, Ty Warner is flush with cash. He's made his billions, and his company is now one of the wealthiest toy sellers in history. But Warner's got a secret that will soon come back to haunt him.
No one is above the law, and everyone, including the wealthy, has to pay their dues.
Once in love with e-commerce, Wall Street has turned its back on the dot-coms.
With the crash of the NASDAQ, the gravy train came to a screeching halt for their dot-com industry.
After the dot-com bubble pops in early 2000, most used Beanie Babies are worth only pennies of their original $5 sales price. Beanie collections now collect nothing but dust. And in 2004, when the Beanie Baby billionaire claims losses of more than $39 million, the IRS believes the toy maker is now playing financial games.
It is imperative that when an individual brazenly breaks the law and lies repeatedly year over year on their income tax return, that person be held accountable. And that's true if you're rich or you're poor.
More than a decade after the end of the Beanie Baby boom, Ty Warner, now ranked 209 in the elite Forbes 400 richest people in America, is arrested for tax evasion.
Ty had an account, and in this offshore account, Ty nestled about $100 million and didn't tell anybody about it.
We know that there were a lot of people who were not happy with Ty, that were kind of happy that he got caught. When you burn bridges, those people will go against you very quickly.
Ty Warner was sentenced today. He got a 2-year probation. He also has to serve 500 hours of community service.
Based on federal sentencing guidelines, Warner could have faced up to 57 months in jail. But the judge cuts him a break, in part because of the tens of millions of dollars in charitable contributions Warner has made through the years.
He's a very complicated man. He's a marketing genius. He's incredibly wealthy, but I think the best way to describe Ty Warner is, I heard a story, his executives were asked, would you trade places with Ty Warner? And every single one of them said absolutely not. Because of his profound sadness. There's just a void that just can't get filled, I guess.
Being able to say that I did something that was never done before, and I did it in association with a product as fun and playful as Beanie Babies, is something that I will always hold dear to me. In some kind of way, the work that I did made an impact to people in some kind of way.
When people ask me about collecting, I say don't collect things, collect memories. My little grandchildren, 1.5 and 3.5, play with a lot of the Beanie Babies. None of the original 9, might I say. I still keep those tagged in a cabinet.
A lot of parents now are holding those Beanie Babies, giving them to their millennials who now are having children. And I think we're going to have another generation who will fall in love with these original Beanie Babies.
I won't ever say that we'll never see anything like Beanie Babies again in terms of the mania. Because, yes, there was a confluence of things happening at just the perfect time to drive the American people into a frenzy. Hasn't happened yet, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen.
I talked to Ty and I told him, I think it would be really cool to do something different in the tags. And he said, sounds good. Can you show me an example? This is the first Beanie Baby poem that I ever wrote. This is Stripes the tiger. Stripes was neither fierce nor strong, so with other tigers, she did not get along. Jungle life was hard getting by, so she came to live with her friends at Ty.
He was going to play the ultimate bluff. Don't worry, Del said loudly to the prankster, "Yeah, I'll tell you what we would like you to do with the money. Give all the money to charity, yeah. And if you phone here once again, I'm going to come down there and kick your arse into shredded duck. Goodbye." Del slammed the phone down, feeling a massive surge of adrenaline and pride. He had outsmarted the Joker. He turned to his family, beaming, expecting applause for his quick wits. See, that's it. Jonathan Ross calling me. Pat, Del laughed, clapping his hands together. He said give the $50,000 to charity. What a nice guy. I told him where to go. Del threw his arms wide, looking at the stunned faces of his family. He mistook their horror for awe. Who do you people think we are? Eh? Del shouted, his voice echoing in the shabby flat. We're the Trotters, and we're back. Yes, 50,000 pounds. He didn't realize it yet. He wouldn't realize it until the morning papers confirmed that the quiz show had indeed made a mistake. That Ravel was the correct answer, and that Derek Trotter, in a live act of unprecedented philanthropic generosity, had just donated 50,000 pounds to a cat sanctuary. But for tonight, in the peeling wallpaper of Nelson Mandela House, Del Boy Trotter felt like a millionaire once again. The Peckham Phoenix, a novelization of the Trotter Chronicles. Chapter 1, The Ghost of Millions Past. The rain in Peckham didn't fall, it surrendered. It was a gray, miserable drizzle that clung to the concrete skin of Nelson Mandela House like a damp shroud. Inside the familiar, slightly cramped confines of the Trotter flat, the air smelled of stale cigars, cheap air freshener, and the lingering scent of Uncle Albert's legendary and lethal Navy stew. Derek Del Boy Trotter sat on the edge of his velvet-covered sofa, adjusted his gold rings, and looked at the man sitting across from him. The man's name was Justin Asleek, professional type with a digital recorder and a look of thinly veiled pity. So Justin began, his voice smooth as silk. I've got the basics, the watch, the auction, the 6.5 million pounds. But I want the real story, Derek, your raison d'etre, as they say. Del's eyes lit up at the French, or what he assumed was French. Raison d'etre, oh, absolutely, Justin. Laboratory Garni. As the locals say, it means it is what it is, doesn't it? Beside him, Rodney Trotter, the younger, taller, and infinitely more anxious brother, let out a long, suffering sigh. Rodney's knees were bouncing. He looked like a man who expected a trapdoor to open beneath him at any moment. Don't mind him, Del said, waving a hand toward Rodney. He's a bit touchy. Personal matters. Bedroom hiccups. You know how it is when the spark becomes a bit of a damp squib. Del, Rodney hissed, his face flushing a deep crimson. I told you that in confidence, and I'm not here to talk about my private life with Cassandra. I'm here because I have to be. Of course, Del soothed, though his eyes were already drifting back to the past. You want to know how we became successful? Justin, it was destiny. We were ordinary people, living ordinary lives, until we found it, a piece of history, an antique watch that changed everything. We thought about giving it to the British Museum, you know, for the nation. But then we thought the nation's got enough stuff, so we flogged it. The memory of the auction room still hung in the air like a golden haze. 6.5 million pounds. It was the kind of money that didn't just change lives, it rewrote them. For a few years, the Trotters weren't just traders, they were royalty. They had divvied the dosh, made sure Uncle Albert had a nice little drink, which in Albert's case meant enough cognac to preserve a whale, and set their sights on the horizon. But then, Dole's voice dropped an octave. We met the stockbroker. Chapter 2. The Tropical Storm. The downfall didn't happen in a boardroom in London. It happened in the humid, feverish markets of Central America. Dell, fueled by his eternal optimism and a steady diet of business lunches that usually involved more gin than geography, had invested the Trotter birthright into a venture that promised a return the likes of which the world had never seen. It was vibrant, Dell explained to Justin, his hands sketching patterns in the air. A Central American miracle. Everyone was pouring money in. We were making more money than the Royal Mint. We were flying helicopters to Nice just to pick up magazines. We were water skiing while the world turned. But the miracle was a mirage. While the Trotters, Dell and Raquel, Rodney and Cassandra, and young Damien were living the high life in Barbados, the political and economic foundations of their investment were rotting. We took the whole family, Dell recalled, a bittersweet smile touching his lips. Even little Damien. He was a natural. Mind you, he did once weed in the swimming pool from the top of the 4-meter board. But that's just spirit, isn't it? Character. The crash hit with the force of a hurricane. One moment, they were sipping champagne on a sun-drenched deck. The next, the credit cards were being declined. The hotel was threatening to call the police. And the business associates who had once bowed at their feet were suddenly unreachable. The internet, Rodney muttered. One button. That's all it took. The news hit the UK before we even got our suitcases packed. We went from being the Peckham millionaires to being those to plonkers in under 6 seconds. They had returned to a financial wilderness. Their homes, company-owned and lavish, were seized. Their old friends, the ones who hadn't invested, looked at them with a mix of amusement and sympathy. But for Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head, the sympathy was short-lived. Mike had remortgaged the pub to follow Dell's lead. Now he was sitting in a cell, awaiting trial for embezzlement, having tried to recoup his losses by borrowing from the brewery. He's innocent, Dell insisted, though even he sounded unconvinced. He just misplaced the paperwork, a victim of circumstance. Chapter 3, The Empty Chair and the Wrong Grave. The return to Peckham was finalized by a tragedy that cut deeper than any bank balance. Uncle Albert, the man of 1,000 wartime stories during the war, had finally reached his final port of call. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving a hole in the family that no amount of gold could fill. He had been living with Elsie Partridge, his girlfriend, a woman Rodney claimed was present when the ribbon was cut at the opening of Stonehenge. The funeral was supposed to be a solemn affair. Del, Rodney, Raquel, and Cassandra now living back in the cramped flat at Nelson Mandela House dressed in their finest black. "I feel bad," Del whispered as they stood in the chilly cemetery. "We were off globe-trotting while he was here. We should have taken him to Barbados. He didn't have a passport, Del," Rodney reminded him. "He'd been around the world more times than a Russian satellite, but he never had a piece of paper that said he was allowed to leave the country. Good job Hitler didn't know that, or we'd have been in right trouble." They stood before a grave, Del delivering a moving, if slightly improvised, eulogy about Albert's bravery in the RAF. He was a hero, Del proclaimed to the small gathering. They called him Bunny because his name was Warren, a legend of the skies. It wasn't until young Damien pointed at a passing Spitfire and asked if his great-uncle was in it that a woman approached them. "Excuse me," she said, looking confused. "Who are you?" "We're the family," Del said with dignity. "I'm Derek Trotter. This is Rodney." The woman blinked. "I think there's been a mistake. This is the funeral for Harold Smith. He was in the RAF. Albert, Warren's funeral is to plots over, and he was in the Navy." Del looked at the headstone, then at Rodney. The silence was deafening. "Right," Del muttered, clearing his throat. "Best leave it till the hearse arrives, then. Come on, everyone. Move along. Nothing to see here." Chapter 4, The Court of Broken Dreams. The legal system of the United Kingdom was not designed for the flamboyant complexities of Derek Trotter. Sitting in the dock of the High Court, Del looked less like a fallen tycoon and more like a confused magpie. The Inland Revenue is not interested in vibrant ventures or raison d'etre. They were interested in £48,754, plus interest. Rodney sat in the public gallery, his face buried in his hands. He had been exonerated of all responsibility mostly because the court determined he hadn't actually known what was going on for 90% of the time. The Inland Revenue versus Trotter's Independent Traders, the clerk announced. Del tried his best. He spoke of foresight, of slave-like attention to detail, and of checks that were always on time, even if they did happen to bounce like rubber balls once they hit the bank. "Mr. Trotter," the judge said, peering over his spectacles, "you are effectively bankrupt." "Exonerated," Del whispered to his lawyer. "Bankrupt," the lawyer corrected. They returned to the flat in a daze. Raquel was waiting, her face etched with worry. "So," she asked. "No prison," Del said, trying to find a silver lining. "Not yet, anyway. But we've got a year to pay off the debt, or they take the goods, everything of value." "Well, that won't take long," Rodney muttered, looking around the living room. "We haven't got anything of value, except this flat. And the council owns that. No one's even looked at it in 5 years because Dell had it priced as if it were a penthouse in Mayfair. I was trading on its potential. Dell snapped. And I'm still a trader. I've been trading since I was 12. I could sell rice to the Chinese. I just need a new angle. The firm's liquidated. Dell, Raquel said softly, you're disqualified from running it. Dell's eyes narrowed. A familiar spark, the one Rodney feared most, began to flicker. I'm banned from running it, but the company can still operate. We just need a new managing director, someone young, enthusiastic, someone with ideas. He looked at Rodney. Rodney froze. No way. I know that look. That's the plonker look. Rodney, Dell said, his voice dropping into a persuasive purr. Think about it. Legally, there's nothing to stop you taking over. Managing Director Rodney Trotter. It has a ring to it, doesn't it? Like a bell. A very successful bell. I be in charge. Rodney asked, a dangerous glimmer of ambition showing through his fear. Sales, purchasing, finance, the lot. You'd be the boss. Rodders, I'd just be a consultant, an advisor, a significant other to the business. Chapter 5. The Managing Director's New Clothes. Within a week, the Peckham Echo carried a small, somewhat desperate advertisement. Trotter's Independent Traders. Under new management. Managing Director, Rodney Trotter. Consultancy and Party Planning. Marlene and Boyke, the Trotters' longtime rivals, read the ad in the Nag's Head. Rodney Trotter is a managing director. Boyke chuckled, his laugh sounding like a cold engine failing to start, and Cliff Richards on 40 silk cut a day. But for Rodney, the title was a weight he intended to carry with pride. He began wearing a suit, a slightly ill-fitting one from a liquidation sale, and carrying a briefcase that contained nothing but a ham sandwich and a map of South London. He even started listening to Mozart's Symphony No. 38 to ease his executive stress. It helps me unwind, Trig, Rodney told Trigger, the local road sweeper who was as reliable as he was dim. Are there no words to it, Dave? Trigger asked, staring at the CD player. No, Trigger, it's instrumental. While Rodney played at being a mobile, Dell was busy in the background, plotting their grand return. He was waiting for the big one, the opportunity that would wipe out the tax debt and put them back in the yellow coppery. The opportunity arrived in the form of a television screen. Welcome to the game show that everyone is talking about. The television blared. This is live. This is Jonathan Ross. And this is Gold Rush. Dell watched the screen, his eyes widening. 100,000 pounds. The gold at the end of the rainbow. I'm going on it, Dell announced. I've worked it all out. I'm a natural for telly. I've got the charisma, the wit, and I know my history. Dell, Cassandra said, looking up from her book. Last night, the question was who introduced the potato to England, and you said King Edward. I didn't hear the question properly, Del protested. I thought he said, who is the king of potatoes? It was a trick question. Chapter 6, The Studio Lights. The night of the recording, the atmosphere in Nelson Mandela House was electric. Del had spent hours preparing, which mostly involved trying to squeeze into a suit that made him look like a very expensive sausage. You look brave, Raquel told him, adjusting his tie. Rodney and Cassandra stayed behind to mind the business, which really meant waiting by the phone in case a legitimate customer accidentally called. The studio was a blur of neon lights and cheering crowds. Jonathan Ross, flamboyant and quick-witted, moved through the contestants like a shark through a school of tuna. And finally, Ross announced, "We have Derek Trotter from Peckham, a businessman who enjoys fine wines, the theater, and 16th century Italian Renaissance art." Lovely jubbly, Del whispered to himself, flashing a thumb at the camera. The game was a roller coaster. Del navigated the early rounds with a mix of luck and sheer bravado. He correctly identified Kilimanjaro as the highest mountain in Africa. Any idiot knows Fuji makes cameras, he boasted. He survived a challenge from a financial advisor named Mike. Then came the green question, 25,000 pounds. In which state was President Kennedy born? Ross asked. Del paused. He thought of the assassination. He thought of the motorcade. Well, Del said, trying to be clever, when he was assassinated in 1963, he was in a terrible state. He died. The audience groaned. Ross shook his head. I need one of the three options, Derek, Texas, Florida, or California. Del panicked. He used his shot in the dark. Florida, he guessed. The buzzer sounded like a death knell. No, Derek, it was Texas. You're frozen out. But there was a lifeline. A penalty question worth 50,000 pounds. If he got it right, he went to the gold question. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Del's mind went blank. He looked at the camera, his eyes pleading. I'm going to have to use my SOS, Jonathan. And who is your savior tonight? Derek. My brother, Rodney. He's at home, taking care of business. He's got to GCEs. You know, he's the brains. Chapter 7, The Ravel Disaster. Back in the flat, the phone rang. Rodney snatched it up. Hello, is that Rodney? Piss off, Mickey, Rodney shouted. You're getting on my tits now with the impressions. Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. We're live on air. Your brother needs your help for 50,000 pounds. Rodney froze, his heart hammered against his ribs. Oh, my God. Hi, Jonathan. How are you? We don't have time for pleasantries, Rodney. Here's the question. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and the Enchantment? Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Rodney didn't hesitate. He had studied art. He had executive stress music. It's Ravel, Del, 100%. I'm certain. You heard him. Del shouted in the studio. I'll go with Ravel. There was a pause. A long, agonizing silence that seemed to stretch across the whole of London. Derek, Jonathan Ross said, his voice filled with genuine regret. That was the wrong answer. It was Segovia. Ravel was a composer, but he wasn't a classical guitarist in that context. You've lost everything. You're frozen out. The world collapsed. Del kicked the podium. The audience gasped. In Peckham. Rodney dropped the phone. The dial tone sounding like the final notes of a funeral march. Chapter 8, The Aftermath. Del returned to the flat hours later. He looked like a man who had been through a car wash without the car. I was certain, Rodney moaned, slumped on the sofa. I could have sworn it was Ravel. Even Cassandra thought it was Ravel. Well, you're both a pair of dipsticks, aren't you? Del snapped, though the fire had gone out of him. Everyone knows Ravel makes shoes. It was a trick question. They sat in silence, the weight of the 40-9-1,000-pound debt pressing down on them. The dream of the gold was gone. They were back where they started, bankrupt, tired, and stuck in a flat with a ghost of an uncle and a child who thought he was a gangster. Then the phone rang again. Del picked it up. What? No. His face changed. A look of pure, unadulterated shock crossed his features. He says there's been a mistake. It was Ravel. The researchers got it wrong. He says I can take the $50,000 and go back on the show. Rodney leaped up. Yes, I knew it. I'm a genius. But Thendall's expression shifted. He heard something in the background, the faint, unmistakable sound of a jukebox playing Hooky Street in the Nag's Head. Wait a minute, Del growled. Nicky Pierce, you little rat, I'll kick your arse into shredded duck. He slammed the phone down. Was it him? Rodney asked, his hopes crumbling. It was Mickey, Del sighed, the ultimate wind-up. He looked at his family, his brother, his wife, his son. They were all there. They were broke. They were bankrupt. And they were the laughing stock of the borough. But as Del looked out the window at the rain-slicked streets of Peckham, he felt a familiar warmth in his chest. Don't worry, he said, putting an arm around Rodney. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. We were millionaires last week, Rodney cried. Details, Rodney, Del said, a grin finally breaking through. Just details. Now, get your suit on. We've got a suitcase to fetch from the van. I've heard a rumor about a consignment of digital organizers. They're vibrant, Rodney, pure raison d'etre. As the credits rolled in his mind, Derek Trotter knew one thing for certain. As long as there was a deal to be made and a brother to wind up, the Peckham Phoenix would always find a way to fly. Chapter 9, the glass house, and the peacocks. To understand the pain of the present, one had to truly grasp the absurdity of the past. 3 years earlier, the Trotter family had lived in a world where the primary concern was whether the peacocks on the front lawn were getting enough vitamin C. Dell had purchased a riverside estate in Berkshire that looked like something out of The Great Gatsby, provided Gatsby had been a street trader from Peckham who liked a bit too much gold plating. There were marble floors that were so slippery Raquel had to wear grippy socks, and a chandelier in the hallway that was so large it had its own weather system. "Look at this, rotters," Dell had shouted, gesturing to the sweeping views of the Thames. "A man of my stature needs a river. It provides ambience." Rodney, living in a separate but equally lavish wing with Cassandra, had initially tried to maintain his man-of-the-people persona. It was hard to complain about the plight of the working class when you were eating caviar off a silver platter while a man named Benson, who was actually just a local lad Dell hired to wear a tuxedo, polished your BMW. "It's too much, Dell," Rodney had argued during one of their many executive lunches at a five-star hotel in London. "We're losing touch with our roots. I walked past a Greg's yesterday, and I felt like a stranger." Roots, Dell had laughed, adjusted a diamond cufflink. "Roots are for trees. Rodney, we're birds of paradise. We've flown the nest. We've achieved the dream." The dream included Cassandra's parents, who were horrified and fascinated in equal measure. Her father, Alan, had spent many an evening trapped in the gold-roomed smoking lounge, listening to those plans to buy the moon and lease it back to NASA. But the centerpiece of their wealth had been the Central American venture. Dell had been convinced by a man with a very expensive tan and a very suspicious accent that the future of the world's economy lay in a small, unstable republic. Vibrant, Rodney, that's the word. It's a ground floor opportunity. We're not just investors, we're nation builders. When the market crashed, it wasn't a gentle slide. It was a plunge into an abyss. The Berkshire estate, with its peacocks and marble floors, was gone in a week. The Bensons of the world were fired, and the Yellow Capri, which had been sitting in a climate-controlled garage like a holy relic, was once again their only means of transport. The transition back to Nelson Mandela House was like waking up from a dream and finding out you were sleeping on a park bench. The silence of the riverside was replaced by the constant thrum of Peckham Life the Sirens, the shouting, and the rhythmic clink of the milkman. Chapter 10. Iconoclastic Autosuggestion. The bedroom hiccups Rodney had mentioned to Justin were more than just minor glitches. They were the result of a man who had been a millionaire one day and a bankrupt plonker the next. The stress had manifested in a strange, psychological blockage that Cassandra was determined to fix. "It's about memory baggage, Rodney," Cassandra explained one evening. clutching a magazine called Psychology for the Modern Couple. We need to unload it. We need to become different people. Rodney, sitting on the edge of the bed in his pajamas, looked skeptical. Different people. I'm already trying to be a managing director during the day. How many more roles do I have to play? It's called fantasy therapy, she said, her eyes shining with hope. We write down our fantasy figures, and then, for just one night, we become them. No baggage, no history, just us, reborn. Rodney sighed. And does this involve dressing up? Absolutely not. She lied. It's all in the mind. We suspend reality. 2 days later, Rodney found himself standing in the living room, wearing a leather tunic that was 3 sizes too small and a pair of sandals that made his feet look like hairy paddles. He was supposed to be Russell Crowe Gladiator. I look like Spartacus with piles. Cassandra, he shouted toward the bedroom. Cassandra emerged, dressed in a full Metropolitan Police uniform, complete with a hat and a radio. I thought you liked the bill, she said, adjusting her belt. I like watching it. I don't want to be arrested by it. Rodney protested. This isn't autosuggestion. This is a costume party for 2. The evening was a disaster of epic proportions. Every time Rodney tried to unleash the beast, the itchy wool of the tunic or the clinking of Cassandra's handcuffs broke the spell. To make matters worse, Del kept knocking on the door, asking if they'd seen his lucky cufflinks. Go away, Del, Rodney screamed. I'm busy being a Roman general. A Roman what? Del's voice came through the wood. I knew you were a bit weird, Rotters, but that's taking the biscuit. Anyway, tell the policewoman in there that the taxman's downstairs if she wants to arrest someone useful. The night ended with Rodney sitting on the floor, eating a cold kebab, still wearing his leather skirt, while Cassandra cried quietly in the bathroom. The memory baggage wasn't unloaded, it was just heavier, and now it was wearing a uniform. Chapter 11, The Sultan and the Brush. The lowest point of their return to trading came when Mickey Pierce decided to play his most elaborate prank yet. It started with a phone call to the managing director. A voice, thick with a Fox-Brunian accent, claimed to be a Sif Hazen, a representative of the Sultan of Brunei. His Highness has seen your advertisement in the Peckham Echo, the voice said. He is very impressed with your party planning. Rodney, desperate to prove his worth as the new boss, took the bait hook, line, and sinker. The Sultan of Brunei. Well, yes, we are quite selective, but I'm sure we can accommodate His Highness. Excellent. He wishes to fly you to Brunei. He has recently purchased a 3-wheeled van and needs a consultant to show him how to start it on cold mornings. Del, listening in on the extension, was already calculating the airfare and the potential for selling the Sultan a crate of designer sunglasses. Ask him if he needs any electronic organizers. Rodney, tell him we have a vibrant consignment. Shut up, Del, Rodney hissed. The prank went on for days. Rodney spent his entire savings on a book called Etiquette for Royalty and practiced bowing in front of the hallway mirror. He even tried to learn a few words of Malay, which resulted in him accidentally telling the milkman that his cat was a majestic pineapple. The reveal happened in the Nag's Head. Rodney arrived in his best suit, carrying a folder full of consultancy proposals, only to find Mickey Pierce and the rest of the gang wearing cardboard crowns and singing "Oh, Sultan of Peckham." The laughter followed Rodney all the way home. It was a stinging reminder that in the eyes of the world, he was still the plonker with the suitcase. Chapter 12, The Phoenix Stirs. Despite the humiliation of the Sultan, the ravel disaster on Gold Rush, and the crushing weight of the tax debt, a strange thing began to happen in Nelson Mandela House. Del Boy didn't give up. He spent his nights in the office, the kitchen table, surrounded by ledgers and half-drunk cups of tea, plotting their comeback. He was a man possessed. He found a supplier in Hong Kong who could provide unbreakable glass that turned out to be sugar-based, and he nearly sold 500 of them to a local restaurant before realizing they would melt in the dishwasher. It's a minor setback, Raquel, he insisted. We're pivoting. We're transitioning into ephemeral art. Rodney, watching his brother's tireless energy, felt a spark of the old trotter spirit. He realized that the money hadn't been the most important thing. The thrill of the chase, the constant, desperate, and often ridiculous attempt to stay one step ahead of the world was what kept them alive. You know, Del, Rodney said one evening as they shared a bottle of cheap cider on the balcony, looking out over the flickering lights of the estate. We're pretty good at this. At what? Being bankrupt. No, at surviving. We've been millionaires and we've been paupers. And we're still the same to idiots in a yellow van. Del smiled, his gold tooth catching the light. Idiots, speak for yourself. Rodney, I'm a high-flying consultant. And you? You're the managing director of a world-renowned trading empire. He raised his glass to the future, Rotters, to the next big one. To the next big one, Rodney echoed. The Peckham Phoenix hadn't just flown, it had crashed, burned, and was now dusting itself off, ready for another go. Because in the end, as long as there was a deal to be done and a plonker to help do it, the Trotter name would never truly fade. Epilogue, the trading continues. The yellow Capri Gia roared well, sputtered to life the following morning. The new management sign was slightly crooked, but it was there. They hadn't won the gold, but they still had the lead. And in the world of the Trotters, lead could always be sold as silver if you found the right buyer. Kushti, Del whispered, shifting into gear. Absolutely Kushti. The Trotter Legacy. Book 1, The Midas Touch in Reverse. Chapter 1, The Man in the High Office. The leather in Justin's office didn't just smell of money, it smelled of the kind of ancient, inherited wealth that made Del Boy's designer suits feel like they were still on the rack at a Romford market. Derek Del Boy Trotter sat in the plush armchair, his fingers twitching toward a cigar he knew he shouldn't light. Beside him, Rodney the younger, lankier, and perpetually more anxious brother looked as though he were awaiting a terminal diagnosis rather than a business interview. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Del had joked earlier, a reflex from the days when the suitcase was their entire world. But now, the suitcase was a relic of a past life. They were men of substance now. Or, at least, they were supposed to be. Justin, a man whose skin looked like it had been buffed by professional grade of silk, leaned forward. His eyes were sharp, scanning the two brothers from Peckham like a scientist examining a strange new species of beetle. "I've got the basic details," Justin began, his voice a smooth baritone that echoed off the mahogany walls. "Your business career, the various enterprises. But I want to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, your raison d'etre." Rodney winced at the French. He glanced at Del. "Oh, no," Del whispered, leaning toward Rodney. "Laboratory Garney." "It's raison d'etre, Del," Rodney hissed back. "It means reason for being." "I know what it means, Rodney. I'm just being cosmopolitan," Del snapped, before turning back to Justin with a smile that could sell ice to a penguin and then charge extra for the stick. "Well, Justin, where shall I start? A few years ago, we were just ordinary blokes, working class heroes, if you will, living the dream in a high-rise in Peckham." Del's mind drifted back. He remembered the smell of the market, the roar of the three-wheeled van, and the constant, nagging feeling that this time next year was a destination that kept moving further away. Then came the watch, the Harrison Lesser watch, a small piece of ticking history that had turned to market traders into multimillionaires overnight. "We discovered an artifact," Del said, his voice dropping into a reverie, "an almost priceless piece of British horology. At first, Rodney here being the philanthropist he is wanted to give it to the British Museum. A gift to the nation," he said. Rodney looked at the ceiling. "I never said that, Del." "You did, Rodney. In your heart, you did. But eventually, we decided to flog it. 6.5 million pounds. It was a number that still made those heads spin. They had divvied it up. In short, Uncle Albert had a nice little drink to see him through his twilight years, and then they had looked to the future. We sought professional advice," Del continued, his chest swelling. "A city stockbroker, he pointed us toward a vibrant venture, the Central American market." Rodney let out a long, slow breath. "The Central American market. It had sounded so exotic. It had felt like the ultimate nice little earner. But the tides of the sea, as Del often mused, were as unpredictable as a Peckham election. Chapter 2: The Gilded Fall. The transition from the penthouses of London to the sun-drenched shores of Barbados had been seamless. For a while, the Trotters lived like royalty. There was Raquel, Del's significant other, the woman who had stood by him when he was selling hooky watches and now wore diamonds that could blind a pilot. There was Cassandra, Rodney's wife, whose patience was perhaps the only thing more substantial than their bank balance. And there was Damien, the son Del worshipped, the boy who would never have to know the weight of a suitcase. But even in paradise, the ghosts of Peckham lingered. We took the family everywhere, Del told Justin, his eyes shining with a mix of pride and a lingering grief he couldn't quite name. Business trips to the Caribbean, luxury hotels. We were making more money than the Royal Mint. But we weren't. We weren't just about the cash. We were about the style. He remembered the swimming pools, the champagne, the sense that they were finally, truly untouchable. And then the news hit. It was like the changing of the seasons. One day it was summer, and the next, the world was frozen. The negotiations in Central America had collapsed. The vibrant venture turned out to be a house of cards built on shifting sands. The internet, that invisible web Del only half understood, had carried the news of their ruin faster than a speeding bullet. Suddenly, Rodney interjected, his voice flat. The calls stopped coming. Our business associates became ghosts. We were in a financial wilderness. They had paid for their last luxury hotel on a credit card that was withdrawn before the ink on the receipt was dry. They had returned to London not in a private jet, but in a scramble of desperation. But we had friends, Del said, his voice regaining some of its gravelly strength. Good people. Mike Fisher, the landlord of the Nag's Head, he put his life savings into our venture, remortgaged the pub. Justin's eyebrows rose. And where is Mr. Fisher now? Del's face fell. He's in the nick, awaiting trial. The fraud squad thinks he tried to embezzle the brewery to cover his losses. But he's innocent. Justin never was a man more innocent. He's just a victim of circumstance, like us. Chapter 3: The Witness for the Prosecution. In the hallway outside the courtroom, the air was thick with the scent of cheap cologne and nervousness. Denzel, a man whose constitution was built for the quiet life, was pacing a hole in the linoleum. Sit down, Denzel. Uncle Albert growled from his seat. Albert looked every bit the ancient mariner, his white beard a testament to decades of salty air and wartime sagas. You're wearing the marble out. I can't, Albert. I've never been a character witness before, Denzel stammered. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they find out about that time in '80 for with the van? You're not the one on trial. Trigger said, appearing from the shadows with his usual vacant stare. Trigger was a man who seemed to exist in a different time zone, possibly a different dimension altogether. I'm the one with the most to worry about. I'm managing the Nag's Head while Mike's away. What if they think his fiddles are my fiddles? Just tell the truth, Trig, Albert advised. Trigger nodded solemnly. I'm going to tell them I hear voices. No, Trig, Denzel cried. You're a character witness. You're supposed to make them look good. I do hear voices, Trigger insisted. Mainly my own, but they're very convincing. Inside the courtroom, Dell and Rodney stood before the bench, the weight of the inland revenue pressing down on them like a physical force. The houses were gone. The peacocks Dell had bought for his estate had probably been repossessed by a very confused bailiff. They were back where they started, Nelson Mandela House. The court's decision was swift. Dell was declared bankrupt. Rodney was exonerated of responsibility mostly because the court viewed him as an administrative bystander, but the debt remained. £48,754, plus interest. Don't worry, sweetheart, Dell told Raquel that night, as they sat in the familiar, cramped kitchen of the flat. I've worked it all out. I'm a trader. I've been trading since I was 12. I could sell rice to the Chinese. The firm's liquidated, Dell, Rodney said, looking at his brother with a mixture of pity and annoyance. You're disqualified from running a company. Those eyes twinkled. The old spark. Exactly. I'm disqualified. But you aren't, are you? Rotters, you're young, enthusiastic, full of ideas. Rodney paused, a piece of toast halfway to his mouth. What are you saying? Trotter's independent traders, under new management. Managing director, Rodney Trotter. I'll just be the consultant, the power behind the throne, the Richelieu Louis XIV. Rodney's chest puffed out just a fraction. Managing director, I suppose. Legally, there's nothing to stop me. It's a brilliant idea. Rodney, argent, competent, as they say in Canada. Chapter 4, The Last Voyage of the Ancient Mariner. The news of Uncle Albert's passing had come with the suddenness of a winter gale. He had been living in sin with Elsie Partridge down on the coast, enjoying a retirement filled with cognac and the retelling of his wartime adventures to anyone who couldn't run fast enough. The funeral was a somber affair, or it should have been. Dell, Rodney, and the family stood by the graveside in a cemetery they barely recognized. The wind whipped around them. I feel bad, Dell whispered to Raquel, leaving him here while we were off globetrotting. I wish we'd taken him to Barbados. We asked Dell, Rodney reminded him. He didn't have a passport. The man had been around the Cape of Good Hope 20 times, but couldn't get past Heathrow security. They watched as a man named Roland, claiming to be Albert's nephew, approached. He spoke of Albert with a bitterness that set those teeth on edge. Never bloody stopped, did he? Roland sneered. All those wartime sagas. John Wayne stuff. To hear him go on, you'd think he won the war by himself. Those eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. You've got to remember, Roland, that a lot of blokes lost their lives for our liberty, just so that 50 years later, prats like you would have the freedom to knock them. You want to take this outside? Dad, calm down. Damien pulled at his sleeve. The hearse is here, someone whispered. As the coffin was lowered, Damien looked up. Is that a Spitfire? Dad? Dell looked up. Then he looked at the name on the headstone next to them. Then he looked at the mourners across the way. Rodney, Dell hissed, we're at the wrong funeral. What? This isn't Albert. This is a bloke called Bunny Warren. He was in the RAF. They scrambled away, a chaotic blur of black coats and embarrassed apologies, leading the RAF veteran to his final rest. It was a mistake Albert would have loved. He always did enjoy a bit of a mix-up at sea. Chapter 5, The Gold Rush. The debt to the Inland Revenue loomed like a dark cloud over Nelson Mandela House. Dell needed a miracle. He needed a big win. And as he sat in front of the television, watching Jonathan Ross host the latest hit game show, Gold Rush, he saw his path. I'm going on it, Dell announced. I'm going to win the $100 grand. Dell, you thought the potato was introduced to England by King Edward, Cassandra pointed out. I didn't hear the question properly. I was distracted by his tie. Despite the skepticism, Dell made it. He found himself standing under the bright studio lights, facing Jonathan Ross. He looked out into the audience, seeing Raquel and Damien cheering him on. He sailed through the early rounds. Kilimanjaro. Any idiot knew that. The state President Kennedy was born in. He used a shot in the dark and guessed Florida. He was wrong, it was Texas, but he was still in the game. Then came the 50,000-pound question. Which classical guitarist wrote the opera The Child and The Enchantment? Jonathan Ross asked, was it Ravel, Segovia, or Rodrigo? Dell froze. He looked at the options. He felt the sweat pricking at his hairline. He needed his SOS. He needed the one person he could always rely on for a bit of book learning. I'll call my brother, Rodney, Dell said. The phone rang in the flat. Rodney, currently dressed as a Roman gladiator for a fantasy therapy session with Cassandra, who was dressed as a policewoman, answered the phone. Hello, Rodney, it's Jonathan Ross. Oh, piss off, Mickey Pears. Rodney snapped before realizing it actually was the BBC. The question was relayed. Rodney, the man with two GCEs, the man who had read The Guardian at least twice, didn't hesitate. It's Ravel, Dell, 100%. You heard the man. Dell shouted to the studio. It's Ravel. I know my classics. The silence that followed was agonizing. Jonathan Ross looked at Dell with a pitying expression. I'm afraid it was Segovia. Rodney was wrong. Dell's world collapsed. He had been so close. He had felt the gold in his hands. He walked off the stage, a broken man, leaving his family and his dignity behind in the studio. Chapter 6, The Ravel Twist. Hours later, Dell wandered into the flat. His shoulders slumped. Raquel and the others were already there, the atmosphere thick with disappointment. I'm sorry, Raquel, Dell mumbled. I could have sworn it was Ravel. And so could I, Cassandra sighed, still adjusting her police hat. Well, you're both dipsticks then, aren't you? Dell snapped, his old fire returning for a brief moment. Everyone knows Ravel makes shoes. It was a trick question. He sank into the sofa, defeated. But then the phone rang. Hello. Yes, this is Derek Trotter. What? No. Dell's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Shock, disbelief, and finally, a grin that could light up the whole of South London. He says there's been a mistake. It was Ravel. The researchers got it wrong. I've won the 50 grand, and I'm going back on the show for the 100. The room erupted. Cheers, hugs, and the sound of Rodney falling over his own gladiator sandals. We're back, Dell shouted, punching the air. Who do you people think we are? We're the Trotters. This time next year, we'll be millionaires. In the distance, the jukebox from the Nag's Head seemed to play a celebratory tune. The suitcase was in the van, the dreams were back on the table, and in the heart of Peckham, the legend of the Trotters continued. Chapter 7, The Final Countdown. The following Thursday, the atmosphere at the BBC Television Centre was electric. Dell sat in the makeup chair, his skin being buffed to a radiant orange. He wore his luckiest suit, the one with the subtle pinstripe that he swore looked like bars of gold in the right light. Don't worry, Mr. Trotter, the makeup artist whispered. The country is rooting for you. The Ravel incident is the biggest story in the press. I know, darling, Dell said, checking his reflection. I'm a national treasure, like the crown jewels, only with more charisma. Back in Peckham, the Nag's Head was packed. Trigger, Denzel, and Sid had organized a viewing party. Even Marlene was there, holding a drink that was 80% umbrella. If he wins, Denzel said, his voice trembling with excitement, he might pay me back for that faulty satellite dish. Don't be optimistic, Denzel, Trigger advised. I once lent him a $5 in 1974. I'm still waiting for the interest to compound. The show began. Jonathan Ross looked more fashionable than ever, and the audience went wild as Dell walked out. The questions were harder now. Ancient history, quantum physics, which Dell guessed was something to do with the price of fish, and then the final question. The gold lights swirled. The music reached a crescendo. For 100,000 pounds, Derek, Jonathan began, his voice dropping to a whisper. Which 18th century explorer discovered the Hawaiian Islands? Dell's mind went blank. He looked at the choices: Captain Cook, Christopher Columbus, or Sir Francis Drake. He felt the ghost of Uncle Albert whispering in his ear something about the Pacific, something about a bad batch of rum. He thought of Rodney. Rodney, who is currently at home, probably hiding under the sofa to avoid the stress. He thought of Raquel and Damien. Captain Cook, Dell said, his voice steady. James Cook. I remember it because my old granddad once tried to sell a map of the islands to a bloke in the Nag's Head. The studio fell into a hush. Jonathan Ross held the silence for an eternity. Derek, you are correct. The explosion of noise was deafening. Dell was swamped by glitter, lights, and the realization that the taxman was officially off his back. Chapter 8. A New Dawn in Peckham. The celebration at the Nag's Head lasted until the early hours of the morning. Dell arrived in a stretch limo, his pockets literally bulging with the official confirmation of his winnings. Drinks on the house, Dell roared as he was carried into the pub on the shoulders of his friends. But as the night wore on and the champagne began to settle, Dell found himself sitting in the corner with Rodney. The gladiator outfit had been exchanged for a sensible sweater, but Rodney still looked slightly shell-shocked. We did it, Rodders, Dell said, clinking his glass against Rodney's. The debt's paid. The flat is safe. We might even have enough left over for a nice little holiday. Not Barbados, maybe somewhere a bit more humble. Wagner Regis? Dell, Rodney said, looking at his brother. I'm sorry I got that first question wrong. I really thought I'd blown it for you. Forget it, Rodney. If you hadn't been wrong, we wouldn't have had the drama. And without the drama, we wouldn't have been on the front page of the Sun. It's all marketing. Prove. It's all part of the master plan. In the corner, Trigger was talking to a portrait of the Queen. I hear voices. Your Majesty, they're telling me that this time next year, we're going to be millionaires. Dell laughed, a sound that echoed through the smoky room. The suitcase might be in the van, and the van might be a bit rusty, but the Trotter spirit was invincible. As the sun began to rise over Nelson Mandela House, painting the concrete in shades of pink and gold, Derek Del Boy Trotter looked out over his kingdom. You know, Rodney, he whispered, life's a lot like the changing of the seasons. But as long as you've got family and a bit of laboratory, Garney, you'll always find your way home. It's raison d'etre, Dell, Rodney sighed. Whatever, Rodney, just whatever. As Dell always said, Nange tout. The end. Only Fools and Horses, The Trotter Chronicles. A novelization of If They Could See Us Now. Chapter 1, The Echoes of a Suitcase. The yellow Reliant Regal Supervan 3 rattled through the streets of Peckham. a three-wheeled relic of a bygone era that refused to die. Inside, the air smelled of stale cigars, knockoff perfume, and the faint, lingering hope of a man who believed that this time next year will be millionaires, even though, technically, they had already been millionaires and lost it all. Derek Delboy Trotter gripped the steering wheel with fingers adorned with rings that caught the pale London sun. He was humming a tune, a rhythmic cadence that mirrored the ups and downs of his life. It was a song about suitcases and mysteries, about the changing seasons and the tides of the sea. It was the anthem of the street trader, the philosophy of a man who lived by his wits and his hooky gear. "I'll fetch the suitcase from the van," Del muttered to himself, his voice a gravelly baritone. "'Cause if you are the bestest, but you don't ask questions, then, brother, I'm your man." Beside him, Rodney, his younger brother, the one with the GCEs and the sensitive disposition, looked like he was about to have a nervous breakdown. Rodney was staring out the window at the familiar gray blocks of Nelson Mandela House, his lanky frame cramped in the passenger seat. "What's up with you, Rodney?" Del asked, glancing at his brother. "You look like a dog that's just realized the cat's got the house keys." "I'm a bit nervous, that's all," Rodney replied, his voice thin. "I mean, this bloke we're going to see, this Justin, he's a documentary filmmaker. Del, a professional. He's not going to be asking me anything about my private life, is he? My marriage? My problems?" Del gave a dismissive wave of a gold-clad hand. "Of course he ain't. We're not that private, are we? I mean, everyone in the Nag's Head knows your business. He's not going to want to know about you and Cassandra's little hiccups in the bedroom department." Rodney stiffened. "What hiccups? Me and Cassandra haven't got any problems. And I told you that in confidence, Del, strict confidence." All right, keep your hair on," Del chuckled. "I'm not going to be telling him about jiffins and things, and I won't tell him what Cassandra wears, either, unless he asks, of course, for the sake of the narrative." They arrived at the office building, a glass and steel monolith that screamed success in a way the Trotters no longer did. They were here to tell their story, the rise, the fall, and the inevitable restructuring. Chapter 2. The Raison d'Être. The office of Justin, the filmmaker, was sterile, minimalist, and terrifyingly modern. Justin himself sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Bill's entire inventory of digital watches. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Justin said, not looking particularly sorry. "It's been a particularly busy morning. Now, I've got all the basic details about your business career, etc. But what I'd like to do is to get an insight into the real you. How you started, how you became so successful, but more importantly, your lives and your raison d'être." Del leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. "Oh, no. Laboratory Garney," He replied, mangling the French with his signature confidence. To Del, French was not a language. It was a spice you sprinkled on a conversation to make it taste expensive. Justin blinked, momentarily stunned by the linguistic assault. Right, so,